Friends, it's indeed my great pleasure that I am again ready with a subject matter, art and architecture, on which I am going to share my humble ideas and would like to cover the entire period of ancient civilizations till date in a chronological order. The idea and perception of art and architecture have evolved significantly from ancient time to the present, influenced by shifting cultural values, philosophical concepts, technological advancements, and at the same time, historical events as well. Now, let us try to broadly understand and see the evolution of art and architecture from ancient civilizations till today. Let us take the period, say, C 3000 BC to 500 CE. I'm just going to talk about in a little bit about ancient civilizations, Egypt, Greek, and Roman. Art during this period, ancient art often served religious, political, or commoditative purposes. In Egyptian civilization, we find in Egypt, art was closely tied to the afterlife, emphasizing continuity and eternity. In Mesopotamia civilization, we find the art is being portrayed power, with figures like rulers depicted with exaggerated strength. Greek art, it explored human form and balance, culminating in idealized sculptures. As regard architecture is concerned, architecture during this period was grand and monumental, designed to embody spiritual beliefs and power. The pyramids of Egypt, for example, they symbolized eternity, while Greek temples like the Parthenon were built with harmony, balance, and precision. In Rome, during this period, architecture was utilitarian yet grand, as seen in aqueducts and the Colosseum. During the Middle period, say c. 500 to 1400 CE, art during this period was largely religious, with Christian themes dominating Europe. Byzantine art was characterized by gold backgrounds and religious iconography. Gothic art emerged during this period with more naturalistic figures and attention to detail, though always subordinated to religious themes. Architecture during this period, we find that the Gothic architectural style emphasized height and light, with towering cathedrals like Notre Dame and stained glass windows symbolizing divine light. Romantic architecture, with rounded arches and heavy stone, was focused on creating fortress like churches. Let us come now to the Renaissance period, which is c. 1400 to 1600 CE. During the Renaissance, the art was it was revival, in fact, of revival of classical ideals and focus on humanism, which placed humans and their experiences at the center. Artists like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo embraced realistic proportions, anatomy, and perspective, exploring themes beyond religion. Architecture during Renaissance period defined it reflected actually harmony, proportion, and symmetry inspired by classical Roman and Greek architecture. Architects like Brunelleschi developed techniques like linear perspective, as seen in structures like Florence Cathedral's dome. During the period of 1600 to 7050 CE, we find Baroque and Rococo. Baroque art during this period emphasized grandeur, drama, and movement, often with a sense of tension or excitement. Caravaggio and Bernini used chiaroscuro of light and dark contrast to create dramatic effects, and Rococo followed, focusing on lighter themes with ornate and playful elements. Architecture. Now, Baroque architecture was elaborate and dramatic, often intended to impress or express power. As in St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, Rococo architecture was more decorative with a lighter, more whimsical approach as seen in some French palaces. From 1750 to 1850 CE, we find an era known as Neoclassicism and Romanticism. Now, during this period, we find that Neoclassicism, it actually revived classical themes with an emphasis on order and rationality influenced by the Enlightenment. Romanticism, in contrast, it celebrated emotion, nature, and the sublime, rejecting rationality. Artists like Goya and Turner explored intense emotions and the unpredictability of nature. Regarding architecture during this period, Neoclassicism drew directly from ancient Greek and Roman styles, favoring columns and symmetry as seen in buildings like US Capitol. Romantic architecture favored styles that evoked a sense of history and emotion, including Gothic revival in England. Now let's come to the modernism period, that is 1900 to 1970 CE. During this period of art, modern art broke away from traditional forms, focusing on abstraction, minimalism, and expression. Movements like Cubism, Surrealism, and abstract expressionism explored inner psychology and rejected realistic representation. Very important, artists like Picasso and Jackson Pollock emphasize innovation. Architecture during this period, we find that modernist architecture embraced function, minimalism, and new materials like glass and steel. Le Corbusier designs focus on simplicity and machines for living, while Bacchus influenced clean, functional, and geometric designs. Now let us come to the period of postmodernism and contemporary art, that is 1970 to present era. We find during this period, 1970 onwards, postmodernism, it questioned traditional definitions and blurred boundaries between high art and popular culture. Art became more conceptual with movements like pop art, pop art, minimalism, and digital art pushing boundaries. Artists like Warhol and Hirst often mix media, exploring themes of consumerism, identity, and critique of culture. As regards architecture is concerned, postmodern architecture rejected the uniformity of modernism. Instead, it embraced eclecticism and playfulness. Contemporary architecture often uses high tech and sustainable materials with a focus on organic forms, as seen in the works by Frank Gehry and Zaha Hadid. Now, there are some little characteristics that we find that 2000, I mean, onwards till present day, we find a particular characteristic which we call it as digital and virtual art. The rise of digital media has brought two forms of art, including digital painting, three dimensional modeling, NFTs, and virtual reality experiences. Artists explore digital aesthetics, interactive installations, and online platforms to reach global audiences. Regarding architecture, digital tools have enabled complex non linear forms that were previously impossible to construct, and sustainable, eco conscious design is now a priority. Architecture blends now technology, design, and functionality in innovative ways, exemplified by eco buildings and smart homes. So, in a way, it may be stated that the evolution from ancient to contemporary art and architecture reveals a journey from strict functionalism and spiritual themes to what we call it experimentation, individuality, and technological integration. Today, art and architecture embraces diversity and respond to global issues, combining forms, function, sustainability, and digital innovation. Now, this is the very general uh, concept of art and architecture from ancient time to the modern day. Now, it will be my humble endeavor to speak something about the idea of art and architecture in the context of India, Indian civilization. Now, the evolution of Indian art and architecture have evolved over centuries, depicting the nation's what? Cultural, religious, and historical diversity. Let us start from ancient India, say 3000 BCE to 600 CE, what we call it Indus Valley civilization. What was the art, concept of art during this period? It during this period, Indus Valley civilization, it highlights what terracotta figurines, steatites seals, and pottery with geometric designs. It is important to mention about famous dancing girl and Pashupati seal. Regarding architecture, we find high level of urban planning with grid pattern, drainage systems, and interestingly, the monumental structures like the Great Bath of Mohenjo-daro. Let us come to the Vedic and the later Vedic period, that is 1500 to 600 BCE. Now, during this period, we don't find there is actually a negligible architectural remains. However, in the field of art, mainly art actually it focus on symbols like fire altars, yaganas, and early tribal motifs. During Maurya period, 322 to 185 BCE, in art we find polished stone sculptures such as the lion capital of Ashoka. In architecture, we find stupas like Sanchi Stup, rock cut caves, Barabar caves, and pillars with inscription. So, in modern period, we find the evolution of art and architecture taking much more concrete shape. Now, the post-modern period we see 200 BC to 300 CE, art was It flourished due to Buddhist art and architecture. We find now, for example, we find Ajanta caves, Gandharva and Mathura School of Art, blending during this period Hellenistic and Indian styles. Now let's come to the Gupta period, that is 320 to 550 CE. We find in the realm of art iconic sculptures of Hindu deities like Vishnu, Shiva, and Durga. In the field of architecture, Hindu temples with shikharas, for example, Dashvatama Temple, Deoghar, and elaboration of Buddhist stupas and chaityas. Now let us come to the medieval period, medieval India, 600 CE to 1700 CE. During the early medieval period, we find Dravidar, Dravidan, South India, and Nagara, North India. Temple styles emerged. And for example, the iconic examples may be given as Brihadeswara Temple, Tanjore, Khajuraho temples, and Konark Sun temples. Now let us come to the Islamic period and Islamic art and architecture, say from 12th to 16th century. Now we find during this period arrival of the Delhi Sultanate, what it introduced. It introduced Persian and Central Asian styles, structures. For example, we find very famous historical buildings like Qutub Minar, Elai Darwaza, and tombs with domes and arches. Mughal architecture during this period, 16th to 17th century, we find that it is a fusion of Indian, Persian, and Islamic styles. The Iconian famous structures during this period include Taj Mahal, Fatehpur Sikri, and Humayun Tomb. In the colonial period, say from 1757 to 1947, generally they are interestingly we find during this period European academic realism influenced Indian painters like Raja Ravi Verma. We also find during this period emergence of the Bengal School of Art led by Ambindranath Tagore, and they revived Indian traditions in the field of art. As regards architecture is concerned during this period, Indo-Saracenic style. Was this style? Blending Gothica or Gothic, Mughal, and Victorian elements. For example, this includes what we call as Victoria Memorial, Kolkata, and Gateway of India, Mumbai. Now, these two architects are example of combination of Gothic, Mughal, and Victorian elements. Now, let's come to the modern and contemporary India, that is 1947 till we may call it at present times. Evolution of modern art, we call it as Progressive Artist Group 1947, led by F.N. Souza and M.F. Hussain. They brought modernistic perspectives. And another significant feature that was evolved was expression, experimentality or experimentation with abstract surrealism and socio-political themes. Now, the contemporary art, we find mingling of what? Diverse mediums such as installation, digital art, and performance art by artists like Subodh Gupta and Anish Kapoor. And modern architecture, post independence refined, important references may be highlighted. For example, the establishment or the development of Chandigarh and the Chandigarh's planning and its urban setup. It was a stone for urban planning, a novel urban planning. It was developed by Le Corbusier. Now, few recent trends we can little highlight also at the same time. We find that there is a sustainable architecture and innovative designs in the field of architecture. The example will be given of Lotus Temple that will located in Delhi and Infosys campus that is located at Bangalore. So, to conclude, I may submit most humbly that India's art and architecture exist as a living testimony to its dynamic history, with each era impacted its influence, characteristics, and indelible mark on the nation's aesthetic identity. Thank you very, very much. Thank you very, very much.